Now we've got the Michigan Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So we have some bombshell news regarding Trump's recorded phone call to some Wayne County canvassers. But before we get to that, just one general question here. In light of the Colorado decision, the Colorado Supreme Court decision keeping Trump off the ballot, has your office made any decisions one way or the other in terms of whether or not to put Trump on the ballot?
No, nothing's changed for us. I mean, frankly, I wasn't surprised at all that the Colorado process played out the way that it did. It doesn't change our view of who should decide that for Michigan, which is the Supreme Court and ultimately the U.S. Supreme Court. And I think that's still the path that we're on. It's still certainly the path that the nation is on. And we'll see ultimately when the U.S. Supreme Court makes a decision. We would love to see that sooner rather than later because everyone needs clarity heading into the primary season, voters, election officials, the Republican Party. And so we'll see how it plays out. But I think it's all important for us to remember this is one state court's decision, and we'll see what ultimately holds for the entire country.
Now, onto the major report from the Detroit News that Trump and RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel were caught on a recording pressuring Wayne County officials not to sign the certification of the 2020 presidential election. So, first of all, Ronna had said during the call, if you can go home tonight, do not sign it. We will get you attorneys. So, and this was alluded to in the article, but if she offered something of value, in this case, legal protection, in exchange for these canvassers not doing their jobs and helping the Trump campaign, does that not create legal exposure for McDaniel for potentially engaging in some type of bribery?
Sure, potentially. I mean, look, there's no shortage of investigations happening right now at the state and federal level into everything that unfolded in the post-election time of 2020. So I imagine this, or would anticipate that this new revelation, and again, we were well aware that President Trump at the time and his team were actively seeking to interfere with the Wayne County certification vote. The fact that there was a recording of that interference was unknown to me until the Detroit News broke the story. And I don't know of those investigating all of these activities who has what. And my job is to simply continue cooperating with all of the relevant investigations into looking at all of the potential crimes that were committed. And perhaps this latest revelation will be added to those investigations. We certainly know they're all ongoing.
What steps are being taken, if any, to prevent something like this from happening in the future in Michigan?
Well, I think first, since 2020, we worked to change the law to clarify the clearly ministerial role that our local canvassers and the statewide board of canvassers has for every election. It's important to remember that these folks are appointed by the political parties, and especially given the fact that Michigan's Republican Party is now chaired by a very open election denier who still has not only has she not acknowledged the true results of the 2020 election in which Biden won Michigan, she hasn't even acknowledged the fact that she lost the Secretary of State race in 2022 by 14 points.
Yeah.
So I'm not holding my breath for, revelation that somehow the party will start, looking at truth and facts to rule the day, and maybe appointing people to these canvassing boards that similarly will act in furtherance of conspiracy theories as opposed to the law. So on all of those fronts, we have strengthened our legal protections in Michigan so that we can seek court orders when the law is violated. But that doesn't necessarily impact or change or in many cases deter people from trying to break the law to begin with. So we're preparing for that as well by making sure people know what the law is and continuing to be transparent in affirming our election results and making sure we all know that there are people in these positions who may try again to gum up the certification process to further a political agenda. We're not going to let them win in the short or long term. And ultimately in 2020, it was people showing up to these certification hearings, speaking the truth and cogently requesting and demanding that their votes count that ensured indeed the vote and the election would rule the day.
Well, you'd mentioned that the new steps would ensure that these roles are ministerial, but even with that being said, I mean that's not going to stop certain Republicans who would want to overturn the election results from trying to exploit those positions anyway. So I guess what consequences would there be if somebody does try to exploit some of these ministerial positions to kind of go beyond what their job actually allows them to do?
Well, there would be significant ones, certainly fines, perhaps even jail time. Certainly, if they are attorneys, as some of them are, they could lose their license, and so that it would depend on the court and the severity of the violation, certainly. But there are greater deterrents in place now than there were in 2020. And what's also important about that is that we're also all much more aware of the tactics that individuals could wrongly try to deploy here. And so we're able to speak out about them beforehand, which we did successfully in 22, to both assure voters that their vote will still count, the law will prevail, even if we have to go to the court, and also to send a message to those who might be thinking of breaking the law, but not do it, because you're not going to succeed, and you'll ultimately, find yourself facing accountability and justice as a result, and you won't be successful in your nefarious attempts to overturn election results that are real and accurate.
Okay. What vulnerabilities still do exist in Michigan that need to be shored up to prevent them from being exploited?
In 2020, democracy prevailed because of people, because of election workers on both sides of the aisle, clerks, officials, state canvassing board officials, and various other individuals who did their jobs with integrity, even state lawmakers who allegedly were called to the White House by Trump and pressured to do what they could to interfere with our elections. Everyone, by and large, refused to go along with that plan and stood guard. So our vulnerabilities are also our strength, which is people. The greatest vulnerabilities are if a bad actor gets into a position of authority and then is able to use that position to allow election subversion to happen. And of course, our greatest strength is the people who are in those positions and won't allow it. So my job is to make sure people understand the consequences of breaking the law, deter those bad actors from election subversion, and shore up those vulnerabilities as a result by putting stronger people on both sides of the aisle in place where we can to protect the process and protect every vote.
No, just I guess for clarity here, what would have happened if these two Republican canvassers who were named in the article were able to rescind their votes for certification and kind of blocked up the whole process?
Yeah, that night, as I've spoken publicly about a few times, that night of the Wayne County Board of Canvassers meeting was the lowest point for me in the post-election season, because we knew how much damage could be done if these two members of the Wayne County Board of Canvassers, who were appointed by the local Republican Party, did not do their duty and instead voted not to certify. And clearly the former president did as well, because that was why he and the national party chair were trying to pressure them to not certify. Had they not certified, this would have given the Board of State Canvassers cover to not certify the entire state's election, which could have given the state legislature in Michigan cover to vote an alternative slate of electors pursuant to the independent state legislature theory into Congress. And that would have given Congress cover on January 6th to select the Trump electors from Michigan. So it was a clear plan that all began that night in Wayne County. And that's why the former president, I believe, called these individuals, because they were the first domino to fall in this national scheme to block the will of the people. And, of course, the Board of Canvassers did certify. Ultimately, then the Board of State Canvassers certified. And to its credit, the legislature in Michigan did not attempt to disenfranchise the voters of the state. Certainly, we still saw the tragedy unfold on January 6th before Congress at the U.S. Capitol. But that effort did not succeed either, and ultimately democracy prevailed. But it was because people at every step of the process did the right thing and stopped the dominoes from falling.
To that point, like, what was your reaction to knowing that Donald Trump, then the president of the United States, was so involved in the minutia of this election theft scheme, literally on the phone with local officials and like steering their day-to-day actions?
Yeah, it was really, look, it's the president of the United States, right? Every time he attacked me or my colleagues, you never lose sight of that, even though you know the attacks are rooted in lies, even though you know you're doing a good job and doing everything right and by the book. The fact that the leader of the free world, the so-called leader of the free world, is attacking you or interfering with your elections is gut-wrenching. It's awful to have to deal with. And it's scary because there's, the power differential is just so great.
Yeah.
So that's why, to me, it was this moment. I remember sitting down and coming home and thinking, I can't do anything. I'm out. I can't do anything to stop this particular process from playing out other than go to court and force the certification after the fact. But it was really tough to know we were up against such a powerful cohort of people and not know what, but only believe, as I told my team at the time, look, the facts and the truth are on our side, the law is on our side. And at the end of the day, in our democracy, the facts and the law are far more powerful than any individual, even the president of the United States. And that's really why we've seen democracy prevail and everything play out as it has since.
Now, for posterity, because we've seen these attacks in 2020, we're certain to see them again in 2024. Are there any election integrity issues in Wayne County or Michigan more broadly?
Well, certainly, again, it all gets back to people. Are we going to have enough people to staff our early voting sites? In Michigan, we have 9 days of early voting for the first time in all 3 of our statewide elections. Are we going to see election subversion again, or people attempting to work elections and perhaps try to through an insider access, mess up the process, or wrongly gain access to voting machines? So we have plans in place to protect against that, to either deter it or rapidly respond to any inside effort to harm the integrity of our elections. And I'm confident we'll succeed there. I think the bigger thing also that I'm concerned about for everyone, and including here in Michigan, is that this is the first election cycle where we will see 3 global superpowers, Russia, China, and Iran, who are fiercely anti-democracy, have a direct interest in who wins this presidential election for their own goals globally. Certainly, Putin's role in Ukraine is the best and most clear example of that. And so with that greater incentive that they have to interfere with our elections, how will that play out? And how will we need to ensure we protect the voters here in Michigan, here in Detroit, from those international attempts to either interfere with the process or confuse voters and deter them from participating at all, which we know is another tactic that they'll deploy.
For those people who you're looking for to staff, like election volunteers, is there any resources that my viewers who live in Michigan, for example, might be able to follow if they want to help staff the election systems in Michigan?
Yes, you can become one of democracy's most valuable players, as we call them, the MVPs of democracy, by signing up to be an election worker through our website. It's michigan.gov/democracy MVP. And from there, you can sign up, put in your information, and if you're eligible to serve as an election worker, you'll get a phone call and training. And then you'll be deployed to an election location on election day or during early voting in one of our 3 statewide elections. And we do hope people sign up now because we've got a statewide election, our presidential primary, on February 27th. And so preparing for that is front and center right now for all of us. And people who sign up now can still be a part of that election.
Yeah, and I would echo those sentiments. Highly recommend anybody watching or listening right now, if you have the ability to kind of staff one of those positions, then definitely do that. Finally, let's end with this. This is kind of a wonky question here, but about 9 Republican states have left ERIC, and that's the Interstate Voter Information Compact, where states share information with each other to keep the voter rolls up to date. And those states left largely in response to a debunked Gateway Pundit article that fearmongered that ERIC is some George Soros project intended to help the Democrats. Now those states are in the position where they're paying more money for a fraction of the same information that they got when they were in ERIC, and their voter rolls are less accurate. So not exactly accomplishing the whole voter integrity thing that they were seeking to do. What's your response to that move by your Republican counterparts in these other states?
Well, I don't think they were ever actually truly trying to seek or further election integrity by leaving ERIC. I mean, it's nonsensical that anyone would leave really what was the most successful statewide, national, bipartisan collaborative to share voting data and registration data with each other so that we could collectively ensure the accuracy of our voter registration rolls. Leaving that consortium only makes your state less secure. And those states were aware of that as they left. Yet they chose instead to cave to public pressure, even though they all knew that it was rooted in lies and misinformation. And it was really disturbing to see. But also, again, when the truth is on your side, the truth prevails. And what I said at the time and what I'll say now is any of those states, now that they've seen how truly less secure their systems are, how much more money they have to spend of state funds to get a fraction, as you said, of what they got when they were part of ERIC, they're welcome back anytime to restore their relationship, to continue to be a part of this system. And we're committed as part of ERIC to working with every state who wants to be part of this collaborative to ensure we achieve our common goal, rooted in truth and fact, that our elections remain secure and our voter registration lists are accurate.
Secretary Benson, any holiday plans?
Working.
Yeah.
Look, 2024 has begun. I mean, I'll be
Yeah.
excited to spend some time with my 7-year-old, and seeing Christmas through the eyes of a 7-year-old is always fun. But in addition to that, we have got an election in February and our first statewide early voting in February. So I'm excited for the year ahead, and preparations have already begun and will continue throughout the holidays.
Well, thank you for the work that you've been doing and in advance for the work that you're going to have to do in 2024. You are, on the front lines of democracy here. So with that said, Secretary Benson, thanks again for taking the time. Happy holidays.
Oh, thanks. Happy holidays to you. And thanks for everything you do to shine a light on the work that we're doing and encourage others to be a part of it. Well appreciated.
Thank you.